Extension in time. We accepted at the beginning that something exists, and so we called that something the world. How then can the world exist if it does not exist in the past, in the present, or in the future? The concept of the world that we deduce from our usual view of time makes the world appear like a continually erupting fountain of light. Each spark flashing for a moment and then disappearing, never to be seen again. Flashes are going on continuously, following one after another. There are an infinite number of sparks, and everything together produces the impression of a flame, though in reality that flame does not exist. The autumn has not yet come. It will be, but it does not as yet exist. We give no thought to how that can appear, which is not. We are moving in darkness upon a plane and recognize as really existing only the smallest circle around us. Lit by our consciousness, everything outside of this circle that we do not see, we negate, and are reluctant to admit its existence. We are moving upon this plane in one direction only, and this direction we consider as eternal and infinite. However, the direction at right angles to it, those lines that we are intersecting, we do not like to recognize as eternal and infinite. We prefer to imagine them as proceeding into non-existence, almost immediately. As soon as we have passed by them, that the lines that lie before us have not as yet arisen out of non-existence. This is of course nonsense. If, presupposing that we are moving upon a sphere around its equator or one of its parallels, then it will appear that we recognize as really existing only one meridian. Those which lie behind us have disappeared, and those that lie ahead of us have not appeared as yet. We are going forward like a blind man who feels paving stones, lanterns, and the walls of houses with his stick, believing in the real existence of only that which he touches now, which he feels now. That which has passed has disappeared, and will never return, and that which has not yet become, does not for him exist. The blind man remembers the route he has traversed and expects that ahead the way shall continue, yet he sees neither forward nor backward because he does not see anything. Because his instrument of knowledge, the stick, has a definite and inconsiderable length, therefore beyond the reach of this stick, non-existence begins. Wundt, in one of his books, called attention to the fact that our 5 organs of sense are in reality simply feelers by which we perceive the world around us. We exist, groping about, but never really seeing anything, because we are always simply feeling. With the help of modern technology we are extending our feelers a little, however we are still not as yet beginning to see anything. Seeing would be possible only in the event that we were able to know the past and the future. However, we do not see, and because of this can never assure ourselves of that which we cannot feel. This is the reason why we consider as really existing only that circle of reality which our feelers can grasp at any given moment. Beyond that lies darkness and non-existence. Yet are we also supposed to think in this way? Imagine then a consciousness that is not bound by the conditions of sensual receptivity. Such a consciousness can rise above the plane upon which we are moving. It can rise up and see far beyond the limits of our little circle, enlightened by our usual conscious limitations. It can see that, not only does the line upon which we are moving exist, but also that all the lines perpendicular to it, which we are intersecting, which we have already intersected, and which we are yet to intersect, also exist. Then after rising above the plane, this consciousness can see the plane, can convince itself that it really is a plane, and not a single line. It can also see the past and the future lying together, existing simultaneously. That consciousness, which is not bound by our conditions of sensual receptivity, can outrun the stupid traveler, ascend the mountain, to see in the distance the town to which he is going, and be convinced that this town is not being built anew for his arrival, existing quite independently of the stupid traveler. That enlightened voyager can look off, and see on the horizon, the towers of the city where the traveler has just been, and be convinced that those towers have not fallen, that the city continues to remain and to live, just as it existed before the traveler's advent. It can rise above the plane of time, and see the spring behind, the autumn ahead, and see simultaneously the budding flowers, ripening fruit on the trees. It can help the blind man to recover his sight, and to see the road along which he passes, to see that which lies before him, and behind him. The past and the future cannot fail to exist, because if they do not exist then neither does the present exist. Undoubtedly they exist somewhere, together, but we simply do not see them. The present, however, when compared with the past and the future, is the most unreal of all realities. We need to accept that the past, the present and the future do not differ in anything, one from another, and there exists simply one present, the eternal now of Hindu philosophy. Yet we do not perceive this, because in every given moment we experience just a tiny little bit of that present, and this alone we count as existent, denying any real existence to anything else. If we admit and accept any of this, then our view of everything surrounding us will change considerably. We usually regard time as an abstraction, made by us during the observation of really existing motion. That is, we think that by observing motion or changes in the relations between things, and then comparing these with the relations that existed before, which exist now, and which may exist in the future, that we are deducing the idea of time. We shall examine later how correct this view of time really is, but for the moment, let us say the idea of time is composed of the concepts of the past, the present, and the future. Our concept of the past and present, though not very clear, are yet very much alike. As to the future, there exist a great variety of views. It is therefore necessary to analyze the theories of the future as they exist in the mind of contemporary man. There are two existent theories, that of the preordained future, and that of the free future. Preordination is established in this way. We say that every future event is the result of those events that happened previously, and are created such as they will be, and not otherwise, as a consequence of a definite direction of forces that are contained in preceding events. This means, in other words, that future events are wholly contained in preceding ones, and if we could only know the force and the direction of all events that have happened up until the present moment, i.e. if we knew all of the past, then by this we could know all of the future. Sometimes, also knowing the present moment thoroughly, in all of its detail, we may foretell the future. If the prophecy is not fulfilled, then we can say that we did not know all that has been, then point out in the past some cause that had escaped our observation. The idea of a free future is founded upon the possibility of voluntary action and an accidental new combination of causes. The future is regarded as indefinite, or defined, only in part, because in every given moment new forces, new events and new phenomena are born, which lie in a potential state, not causeless, but also not incommensurable with causes either. As for example the burning of a city from one single spark. It is impossible to detect or measure them. This theory affirms that one and the same action can have different results. One and the same cause can have different effects, and introduces the hypothesis of quite arbitrary volitional action on the part of an individual, bringing about profound changes in the subsequent events of their own life and the lives of others. Supporters of the first theory contend on the contrary, that volitional, involuntary actions depend also upon causes, making them necessary and unavoidable at a given moment. That there is nothing accidental, and there cannot be. That we call accidental only those things, the causes of which we do not see by reason of our limitations. That different effects of causes, seemingly the same, occur because the causes are different in reality, and only appear similar for the reason that we do not understand them enough, nor see them sufficiently clearly. That dispute between the preordained future and the free future is an indefinite dispute, and neither of these theories can say anything decisive. This is so, because both theories are too literal, too inflexible and too material. One repudiates the other, and both say either this or that. In the one case, their results are completely cold predestination. That which will be, and nothing can be changed. That which shall befall tomorrow was predestined, tens of thousands of years ago. Their results in the other case, a life balanced upon some sort of needle point called the present, which is surrounded on all sides by an abyss of non-existence. A journey in a country which does not as yet exist. A life in a world that is born and dies at every moment, in which nothing ever returns. Both of these opposing views are equally untrue, because the truth in the given case, as in so many others, lies within the union of two opposite understandings. In every given moment, all the future of the world is predestined and exists, but it is predestined conditionally, i.e. it will be such or other future according to the direction of events at a given moment. Unless there enters a new fact, and a new fact can enter only from the side of consciousness and the will resulting from it. It is necessary to understand this, and to master it. Aside from this, we are hindered from a right concept of the relationship between the present and the future, by our misunderstanding of the relationship of the present to the past. The difference of opinion exists only concerning the future. Concerning the past, we are agreed that it has passed, that it does not exist now, and that it was such and it has been. In this last statement lies the key to understanding the incorrectness of our views of the future. In reality, our relationship both to the past and the future is far more complex than it may at first appear. In the past, behind us, lies not only all of that which really happened, but also that which could have been. In the same way, in the future, lies not only that which will be, but everything that may be. The past and the future are equally undetermined, equally exist in all of their possibilities, and equally exist alongside the present. By time, we mean the distance separating events in the order of their succession, binding them into different wholes. This distance, however, lies in a direction not contained in three-dimensional space, and therefore it becomes the new dimension of space. This new dimension satisfies all requirements of the fourth dimension on the following grounds. It is incommensurable with the dimensions of three-dimensional space. Just as a year is incommensurable with the city of New York. It is perpendicular with all directions of three-dimensional space, and is not parallel to any of them. As a deduction from this, we may say that time, as it is usually understood, includes in itself two ideas, that of a certain, to us, unknown space, the fourth dimension. That of motion upon this space. A constant mistake is made, because we never see two ideas, but only one. Usually we see in time, the idea of motion, but cannot say from whence this motion comes. Where, from what, or upon what space. Attempts have been made to unite the idea of the fourth dimension with the idea of time. However, along with those theories that have attempted to combine the idea of time with the idea of the fourth dimension, have always appeared the concept of some kind of spatial element existing in time. Then along with this is usually omitted motion upon that space. Those constructing these theories did not understand that by leaving out the possibility of motion, they were advancing the demand for a new time, because motion cannot proceed outside of time. As a result, time proceeds ahead of us, like our shadow, receding accordingly as we approach it. Our perception of motion has thus become confused. If we imagine the new dimension of space, and then the possibility of motion upon this dimension separately, then time shall continue to elude all, leaving us to declare that it remains unexplained, exactly as it was before. It is necessary to admit that by one term, time, we designate really two ideas, a certain space and then, motion upon that space. This motion does not exist in reality, but it seems to us as existing, only because we do not see that spatiality of time. That is, the sensation of motion in time, and motion outside of time does not exist, but arises within us, because we are looking at the world as if through a narrow slit. Seeing the lines of intersection upon the time plane within our three-dimensional space. It is therefore necessary to note how incorrect our usual theory of time is, and that this idea of time is deduced by us from the idea of motion. However, it is nothing more than the idea of that succession, which is observed by us as motion. It is necessary to recognize the reverse, and to affirm that the idea of motion is deduced by us out of an incomplete sensation of time, or time sense. In other words, out of a sense or sensation of the fourth dimension, albeit however an incomplete sensation. This incomplete sensation of time, of the fourth dimension, the sensation through the slit, gives us the impression of motion. That is, it creates an illusion of motion that does not exist in reality, and instead there exists in reality only the extension, upon a direction inconceivable for us, in space. Another aspect of the question has great significance. The fourth dimension is bound up with the idea of time and of motion. However, up to this point we shall continue to misunderstand the fourth dimension, unless we grasp to the fifth dimension. Attempting to look at time as an object, Kant says that it is one-dimensional, i.e. he imagines time as a line extending from the infinite future into the infinite past. Only of one point on this line are we conscious, always only one point. Then this point has no dimension, because that which, in the usual sense, we call the present is actually the most recent past and can sometimes even be the near future. This would be true in relation to our usual illusory perception of time. However, in reality, eternity is not the infinite dimension of time that we imagine it to be, but the one perpendicular of time, because if eternity exists at all, then every moment is eternal. The line of time extends in that order of succession of phenomena that are in causal interdependence. First the cause and then the effect. Before, now, after. The line of eternity extends perpendicular to that line. It is impossible to understand the idea of time without conceiving the idea of eternity, just as it is also impossible to understand space if we have no idea of time. From the standpoint of eternity, time does not differ in anything from the other lines and dimensions of space that we are used to, length, breadth, and height. This means that just as in space exist the things that we do not see, then so too does time exist that we do not sense. Or speaking differently, that which we do not see does not stand alone, so too in time events exist before our consciousness has touched them, and they continue to exist long after our consciousness has left them behind. Consequently, extension in time is simply an extension into unknown space, and time is therefore the fourth dimension of space.